Hello, so hopefully I'm live now and you can hear me, and good evening. Yeah, OBS looks like it's all set up correctly. Good to see you, Laserpoint Productions, you alright? I'm a bit tired actually, to be honest, because I've had one of my old man naps for some reason today, where I just now, for the last hour and a half, was having a sleep during midday. I don't know why I decided to do one at this time of day, but, oh well. Alright, Peach. Right, let me set this to live chat, otherwise it doesn't show me all the messages. Hello, Richard, you alright? Right, the good thing is I assume it must have sent out a load of messages or notifications for this one, because I don't think I remembered to actually put on the community tab about this one other than the one on my Discord. And obviously, because you lot are on, means that it's hopefully sent out a notification, which is good. So, as I was saying on the Discord chat, Laser, thanks again for the donations. This mask actually works really well. You know, surprisingly well. As I said, the sort of rubbery plastic mesh on this seems to keep it really good to your face. Alright, Alex. Yeah, I'm alright. As I was just saying to a few other people, quite tired because for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because I'm trying to sort my body clock out, and I've been getting up a lot earlier recently, but now for some reason around this time of day I start feeling quite tired, so I generally just have like a nap for like 30 minutes, an hour or whatever, and I kept snoozing my phone, this one just to about 10 minutes ago, and I thought, well, I've got to get up and make a coffee and do the stream. That's interesting, Peach. That will work okay. My oldest genuine mask, Young Rail Enthusiast, is probably just one of my British interwar sort of pre-World War II masks. A bit like that Mark IV that's sitting there. Because that shelf that was up there, if you were on the other day and heard that the shelf partially collapsed and I got hit on the head by some of my model aircraft and it broke some model aircraft, my head's still really sore from that actually. I imagine I'm going to get quite a big bruise there. I ended up putting raw plugs into the wall down there and drilling it in there, and I've put a shelf on there now which has a PMG, the Polish MP5 like shell, the spares and repairs MP5 I've got, and the British Mark IV respirator. I haven't done any video games in a while on Stream Iron Man, but I'm not going to stop doing that. It's just when I do the webcam streams, more people tend to watch. EO14 filters normally sell for just a few pounds because you can get them bundled in with things like Polish OM14 masks for not very much money at all. I've had it for like a week or two, but yeah, it's relatively new. It's a Warsaw Pact one apparently, like military firing range sign. It's the one for sort of gas hazards or something you need a mask on for. No, you haven't missed anything, Mike, just me saying I've had one of my old man naps again today. So I'm still waking up a bit from that because I felt quite tired sort of at 5 PM sort of time. So I had some dinner, and then I went to bed for like an hour and a half. Not, you know, not going to bed properly, just sort of laying down in all my clothes with the light off. I don't know what you mean by FAL 15, it's an L1A1 SLR. Which is the British built version of an FN FAL. It would work as a particle filter musical gamer, but it wouldn't stop gases, basically. FP5 filters tend to be around £15 on eBay, plus, depending on the year of production and everything. Sadly, I have no idea, Alex. I don't know if you can get spares and repairs of them on eBay, but generally you don't see mask spares and repairs all that often. So, yeah, sadly I don't know if you'd have to buy another mask and then cannibalise parts or whatever. No, the Geiger counters I've got, Wolf, I've got the Polish DP66M, which is a bit similar to that Soviet one, but a bit more complicated. I've got a SOX 01M Geiger and dosimeter, which is a lot more modern. I've got a Polish radiation alarm, and I've recently bought a Mini Instruments like lab spec Geiger counter that goes up to 2,000 clicks per second or counts per second, and it has an alpha probe on it. The shims, as I always say, Lee, because it's my favourite of all the Soviet masks. Yeah, FP5 filters are fine. I think they're ABEC rated, but they're pretty much the same as most modern NATO NBC filters in terms of how long they're meant to last and what they stop. I can go get the good Geiger counter laser, but sadly I've still not got any bananas yet. Next time I go shopping, and I don't go shopping all that often, I'll make sure we add bananas to the shopping list. But I've tried some other fruit with it, and the fruit doesn't work. But I'll tell you what, let me go get the other Geiger counter, and I'll be right back. Right, there we go, there's this one. Don't forget to like the stream, everybody, because it does seem to help them get shared a bit more. So yeah, this is my really good modern one I bought with donations recently. And this is really cool, this Geiger counter. So the reason I was willing to spend so much on this one, it's got the alpha probe, which to a pleb, if you're like me, basically means that what the Geiger counter can do is it basically can pick up alpha radiation. So on the side there you see they've got americium stuck to it as a check source, which is what's in the smoke alarm. So with an alpha probe on one of these Geiger counters, watch the needle. If that didn't have the alpha probe on it, the reading would be way, way lower. Generally, you don't smell anything at all, Dylan, other than the rubber sort of smell of the mask, because the filter's taking all the vapours out of the air. So yeah, with if this was set up like a regular Geiger counter, that'd be the only reading you would be getting off that. Yeah, tell you what I'll do, because the Geiger counter makes such a lovely noise, what I'll do is I'll leave the probe open, and I'll just stick that on the desk. Let me move my mouse out of the way. This one, Vrantix, is a Mini Instruments Type 510, or Type 5.10, or whatever it is. But, yeah, Model 5-10EB, according to the sticker on the back. But it can do up to 2,000 counts per second, which means it's a very accurate scientific one. No, I don't have a metal detector, Iron Man. I've had a few offers from people willing to send me them or sell me them cheap, but I've never really been all that interested in metal detectors. Yeah, I'm going to go to Chernobyl next year, young rail enthusiast. I need to look into booking that soon, or at least looking what sort of holiday companies do it as an offer. If you're on about the batteries in this peach, it takes two 9-volt batteries. With some of these, you can also somehow wire them up to the main electricity, but I've just got two 9-volts in, so they're included them. And when I do a battery check, it shows it as being like 90% full on the batteries. Oh, Maxi, let me get my book and I'll show you what that is. It's a kind of extra filter they put on. So if we refer to this book, it's got a Mark IV on the cover, as you can see, like the Mark IV that's now in the frame. It's like one of those bits, isn't it, that you can see on that one. I like the Barnet Banshee. It's a junior bow, it's not like a top-end bow, but so yeah, if I just hold that a bit closer, it's like that one in the middle there, isn't it, with the extra filter on it. Does it say there? It's called a Type EA filter. I'll see if there's an actual page on that in the book. Yeah, there's a thing on the Type EA filter, if you're interested. Yeah, £33 for a Mark IV is good, especially if it's a Mark IV with an additional filter on it. Not that you want to breathe through that filter, but there you go. Decent longswords, as in like reproduction ones. I don't know if Windlass do any decent ones. I've got a Hanway arming sword, and that's quite nice. But they do a Hanway longsword, sort of bastard sword type thing as well. So it's essentially a very similar sword to that one, just with a longer handle and a longer blade. So if they still make that, that would be quite a good model. Because there's always background radiation, Seb, because I've got it left on. Every few seconds it will get about half a count. So the counts per second isn't even one, basically. I think on my ones that do it as counts per minute, these Geiger counters normally pick up, or at least the beta gamma ones, pick up like generally background radiation of like 12 to 14 counts per minute, which is like really, really low. Alright, Daniel. But of course, if I go get some radioactive substances, now I've got my little bit of tritium in here as well, so I need to be really careful, because if I break the tritium, apparently it doesn't glow in the dark anymore. But there is a bit of tritium in the bottom of this somewhere. Yeah, the tritium's just down there at the very bottom. You won't really be able to see that, because you can see the tritium very easily when the lights are off. But otherwise you can't see it. Now I'm just going to assume this hasn't really gone up much since I last checked it. Yeah, the needle's moved ever so slightly, but barely. Okay, so yeah, let's say I was to get this thorium lamp mantle out that's got a old radium watch dial in it. If I was to put that next to the Geiger, that's getting close to 50 counts per second at the moment. You can literally buy radioactive things on eBay, Musical Gamer. If you saw one for $16, I very much doubt it's a proper Geiger counter. It's probably one of those electromagnetic radiation things, which are interesting, but they're not Geiger counters. The LCD Geiger counters are good, but you're going to look at like $100 minimum for them, because Geigers aren't generally very cheap things because of how they work. As for somebody saying, do the hood masks in the background work? Yeah, all of those masks work that are on there. Not all of them fit me properly, and I've got them up as display items, but yeah, they do in theory work. Yeah, I like the Geiger counter ticking noise, especially when it's an analog one like this one. No, they're actual GP5s, Jacob. Yeah, exactly like what Rich said. If you're going to be spending a lot of money on the sword, you might as well, yeah, get a smith to do a custom one for you, like how I had my falchion custom made. For those of you that don't know my falchion, let me just show it, because I love any excuse I can to show the falchion. Let me just balance that on there. I'll balance that down where it can't fall. GP5's a good starter mask, yeah, but don't breathe through the green GP5 filter. So yeah, there's my falchion. This was a custom made one by a smith. So it's the exact sizes and dimensions and everything I wanted it. Yeah, I've bought 2 air rifles from a gun shop, Zeppelin, weirdly enough. Because there's a couple of gun shops not all that far from me, but as I said, I don't actually have a firearms licence. Let me find another check source that isn't quite as radioactive to put against the Geiger so we can have it ticking, but not to such a loud degree on the stream. So there we go, German World War II infantry watch. I'll leave it there and then that will do a few counts per second, but not loads. As I've already said several times, Uncle Sasha, sadly I don't have any bananas in the house at the moment. There were some apples and I tested them and they didn't do anything, so no, there's nothing wrong with it. Do you know how radiation works, Ernie? And it's not a ginger counter, it's a Geiger counter. It doesn't tell me if there's redheads around. The rubber smells slightly different on them and it feels slightly different, but I've not noticed if the rubber's any better or not. I guess for that you'd probably have to have quite a lot of the black and white rubber ones in different sizes and then wear them quite a bit. There's probably some validity to that, but it's just for like my casual use of them I found both have been fine. No, Uncle Sasha, no I don't. Because if you, like I was saying, the radiation stuff I have here is very safe in terms of background levels of radiation. This stuff is only dangerous if I was to, say, put it under my pillow and constantly sleep with it under my pillow every night. Because I'm not going to eat off of these or lick these or anything like that. The radiation levels... Because, let me, get this up on frame and then I can show you this to give you an idea of like some of the radioactive range of this, you know, because radiation is time you're exposed to it, the levels you're exposed to it, and distance. So let's say I've got this watch in my hand here. Look how close I need to start moving the probe before you can hear it ticking at a decent speed. So yeah, the point is with radioactive things like this, is that why they are, yeah, like radioactive and everything, the distance a lot of the radiation stuff I've got barely gives off any range. So if you have it on one side of the room, you have to be literally next to it to actually get any radiation off of it hitting you. What check source did you get that from, Shot Zombie? Are you saying in theory it could give out a count like that? German World War II masks, they generally cost quite a lot. It's going to depend on the condition of them. Volks masks or Volks masks, whatever you want to call them, the civilian masks, generally sell for a lot cheaper than the military masks, but even then, you're still looking at like £30 to £50 generally for them, even more for military masks. That doesn't surprise me, 64 system, to be honest. Eventually, yeah, because if you ingest the alpha particles from some of the radioactive stuff, Musical Gamer, then it can do serious damage to you. Like the Americinium or whatever it's called, that they use in smoke alarms. Let me show you. If I can pick it up from this bowl. Right, okay, so... Oh, in theory, that's good. I thought you meant then, Shot Zombie, you'd somehow got access to, like, graphite core and you were next to it going like, oh yeah, this is a pretty high reading. Right, so, this is Americinium from a smoke alarm, same as the check source on the Geiger counter. So, this gives off very little beta and gamma radiation, you know, the stuff that will go into your skin. this is literally only dangerous if you ingest it. So if you look at something like this, let me just move this watch out the way a second. If I ate this, eating a single one of these can lead to fatal cancers because of how radioactive it is in terms of alpha radiation. But yeah, if I put that on the Geiger counter itself, see, so that's very radioactive in terms of alpha radiation, but this gives off very little beta or gamma. Now, I did just realise something, actually. I've got a little cut on that thumb, so I shouldn't hold it on that thumb. Just because that's where you actually have a danger risk with alpha radiation, is if you've got a cut on your hand and you get it too close to a cut on your hand. Alpha radiation is like, essentially... Now, I am shit at physics, Fico. So, what I'm going to tell you is probably completely wrong, but you might understand it a bit like a layman, like I can. So... basically, what alpha radiation is it's like the radiation that's almost like a physical particle, because your skin stops alpha radiation, paper stops alpha radiation, like very thin plastic stops alpha radiation. So, alpha radiation is only dangerous if it gets into your body, either through ingestion or, you know, like inhaling it. That's why you get the masks like that in the background, which are the Soviet fallout masks. Which aren't actually even gas masks, they're just like cotton masks, because they're designed to prevent you from inhaling radioactive dust, which is called fallout. So alpha radiation, it does the most damage if it gets into your body, but it actually is the hardest one to get poisoned by, because it's the easiest to prevent, you know. Yeah, alpha radiation can be stopped by skin or paper 64 system. It's why, like, even a very basic respirator, like if you see those cotton masks there, or the Soviet Y2K particle masks, they're good enough to stop radioactive particles from alpha radiation. Beta and gamma is the more dangerous stuff in terms of how it can get into you. I don't know, Aegis, but at least you're on. My favourite gas mask, James, is the Avon CT12. I'm alright, Peach, because I've tested this before. If I rub my hands against that alpha stuff, and then put my hands on the Geiger counter, notice that they're not really giving you a reading. So the good thing of that americinium is, although it is alpha particles, it's on a thing where it's not like something that's going to easily come off and go into a cut. Beta you can stop with aluminium, and gamma is the one you can stop with thick enough concrete or lead. Again, anything that's thick enough will stop radiation. So like the more layers of anything you put between you and the radiation, the less of it gets through. But yeah, if you were going from a purely like scientific standpoint, paper stops alpha radiation, thin aluminium stops beta radiation, lead stops gamma radiation. It's why they put lead shielding on lots of things that are around strong radioactive sources. Yeah, as I've said before, as long as they're not super thin trash bags, they would give you some protection. The M15's a better mask. Chainsaw Demon. No, Metal Warrior. I mean, nothing serious. Like I said, I've handled lots of these radioactive things. The dodgiest one, and I'm going to make sure I hold it with my left hand, will be this stuff, the Fiesta ware, out of all the stuff I've got. Now, if I hold this correctly to the right, see, you can see actually a thumbprint on there where the oil of my hand has actually damaged the glaze on it. This is back when they did the stupid shit like they thought it was a good idea to make radioactive dinner plates. So if I put this next to the Geiger counter, (200 counts per second), and people used to eat and drink off of this shit. So yeah, this is one of the really dodgy ones. This is some of the dodgiest stuff I have in my collection in terms of health risks, because this gives off alpha, beta, and gamma, as far as I'm aware, Fiestaware. And yeah, it's broken crockery, so don't cut yourself on it. Yeah, it's uranium glaze. They literally painted uranium onto dinner plates because they thought it made it look a nice colour. But yeah. The other thing I have here is a uranium bowl, because they used to like making glassware out of uranium as well, so no, I never did air cadets or army cadets or anything like that, so notice that that bowl is slightly radioactive. Some of the radiation should penetrate the bottom of the bowl there if I put that there, but not loads compared to if I did that into the bowl. Yeah, if you put silica gel in the gas mask, as long as it doesn't leak out, it will absorb some of your sweat and like moisture. Put that back there. It depends really where they're selling it. Bear in mind, for my M15 I paid like £30, so that's a good price for it, but don't pay loads and loads for them. I don't know, Paul, but it's irrelevant now, isn't it, because I didn't do it. Yeah, one of those, like, stupid... Remember those trending videos from, like, a year or two ago? 5,000 degree knife, or whatever it was. So you could have a 5,000 rad knife. Sounds like something from Fallout, doesn't it? A radioactive knife. But yeah, in theory, you could have, you're right, Peach, a Fiestaware ceramic knife, where you stab people and it irradiates them. It's up to you, Ernie, but if you want to do YouTube stuff, then do it, you know, up to you. But if as long as you've got the passion to keep making videos, then yeah. I think a lot of people do YouTube for a bit, get disillusioned, and then stop. Avon CT12 is my favourite mask. Any modern ABEC or NBC filters are good. It doesn't really matter because a lot of them made to, you know, like similar standards. It's not like there's brands of filters that offer better protection than others. If they meet certain standard criteria, then they're that criteria. I wonder, you could in theory, you know, like what that smoke alarm's made from, that's got americinium in an alloy in it, so in theory, yeah, you could forge a knife made from americinium alloy. So then I imagine when you stab people, it put the alpha directly into their blood. That's something very Fallout-y. So I know in Fallout 4 and that, you get the radium rifle, don't you? And the, what's the other one called? The gamma gun? Yeah, the gamma gun. You get like 2 radioactive guns in that. That would work, Mike, I imagine. But again, it seems kind of pointless. They do depleted uranium ammunition, don't they, in shells? But that's not because it's radioactive. It is radioactive, but saying they don't do it because it's radioactive, they do it because it's very dense, so it's very good at penetrating armour. What, where they killed Alexander Litvinenko by putting the polonium in his tea. That was the Bulgarian, I know they work with like the KGB and everything, but that was the Bulgarian Secret Service, wasn't it, or something that used the ricin-tipped umbrella. Cigarette filters would only be particle filters, Metal Warrior, so they wouldn't stop smells. It would be like, you know, these sort of dust masks. They do a similar thing to that. In theory, I don't know if you packed enough cigarette filters, like, you know, you bought one of the, because I've got a bag somewhere. I could somehow test this, maybe. You know, like, buy a bag of 200 filters or whatever it is, or like 1,000 filters for making roll-ups. And then maybe you could put all those filters into something, and then see if that worked as a filter. Well, I do two things, Seb. Well, actually, I do three because I volunteer on Thursdays as well at an animal shelter. But at the weekends, I work at a garden centre close to where I live. And then obviously I do YouTube stuff. I stream most days, Maxi, other than Saturdays because I work weekends. So if I've got the energy after work on Sundays, I stream Sundays. But generally I stream every day of the week now for like an hour. The time isn't always the same every day because I like to do different time zones. You know, stream at different times just because it's convenient for me not to always do it at one time a day. And it also means people can view it in different time zones who wouldn't normally get a chance to watch it. Yeah, I mean, it can fluctuate a lot, Fico. Unless you're getting loads and loads and loads of views, it's not a reliable source of income. But it is very nice on the side, because I get really nice donations from people as well. So they help pay for stuff. But yeah, it's good. But it means obviously I can do a lot more part-time kind of type work alongside YouTube, which is good. You'd have to ask somebody like Richard Weaponsmith that, Richard Hines, because I don't know. It might be possible to reforge them or whatever, but I wouldn't be the person to ask for that. Oh, that's not good you got pepper spray in your face, but good the M59 or M1 mask worked for a bit. Pepper Pig spray, they should do a rebranding of pepper spray because Peppa Pig's so popular and call it Peppa Pig spray. Yeah, I've got a couple of pets now. I've got one fish that's still alive after having it for like a decade, with a load of other fish, and they've all died, and now there's just one fish left in the tank. I've got a budgie and I've got a rabbit. That's it at the moment. There's been points when I've had like loads of pets at once, but because I volunteer at an animal shelter, you know, I sort of get my fill of looking after animals being there, sort of once a week. Just some more Geiger counter nonsense, Michael, really. Alright, see you, Maxi. Peach, you dirty bastard. No, the only things I can think of, Daniel, that are a bit higher than background radiation, that might be slightly interesting, is, they're not in my room, but some of the rooms in the house have fluorescent lights. Fluorescent light bulbs give off a tiny bit of radiation, not much, but a tiny bit. I don't have any bananas. Certain brands of beer are meant to be ever so slightly radioactive. And there's meant to be a few food sources and things like that that are ever so slightly radioactive. Obviously, smoke alarms, as I said, but I already know about that one. I caught a bearded dragon. Yeah, rabbits can live a long time. We had 2 rabbits, and our oldest rabbit was like 10 or something before he died. He had quite a good life, but he was like one we adopted from my neighbour when she got too ill and old to look after him, and then we had him for quite a few years. And he was one that, you know, right until the end, he was like a really happy rabbit. So because you're meant to keep rabbits in pairs, so we've got the female still from those 2 rabbits, but it's probably going to be quite hard to rebond her with another mate, so we've not tried. That's a British Mark IV gas mask from World War II or before World War II. So if you look at the mask on the mug, that's the Mark V, so they're very similar in terms of being masks. If you look at the design of them. I don't know how well I could test water, to be honest, Peach, because you can't stick the probe in the water without damaging the probe. And as far as I'm aware, water itself isn't actually radioactive. Like, you can have particles in the water that are radioactive, but I don't think water itself can actually be irradiated. I know that sounds weird, but it's like, if you have water and radioactive substances get in the water, then the water is carrying radioactive substances, but the water itself isn't actually radioactive. So if you passed the water through another filter, it wouldn't be radioactive anymore, from what I understand with water anyway. My favourite World War II mask, like the best one I think in terms of build quality, is actually the Finnish M39 civilian mask. I like quite a lot of genres Metal Warrior, as long as the music sounds good from the genre, but I'm kind of skewed more towards older music than more modern music. So like 70s prog rock, 80s metal, some early punk stuff, some classical music if it's alright, lots of soundtracks I like. But again, I'm not too restricted by genre, it's more if the music sounds good I'll probably like it, to me, you know. But that means that, you know, I don't exclusively like certain genres, because lots of genres have crap and good music in them. A GP5M, easy name for it. Yeah, GP5M. You get the GP5 and the GP5M, also known as the PMG2. I've never massively listened to Slayer, but I obviously do know Slayer. The most interesting thing, if you want a pointless tidbit with metal, the bloke who was the lead singer in Dragon Force, I think he still is, not the first singer they had, but the second singer. I'll have to check my Facebook and double check I'm going to get his name right, but I'm pretty sure his name's Mark Hudson. He's on my Facebook friends list, because he volunteered at the Blue Cross for a bit, so he was a really interesting bloke to chat to, because that's the nice thing when you volunteer somewhere, you often yeah, Marcus Hudson. Yeah, but that was saying that's my most interesting story. If people say, "Have you met a celebrity?" It's just chatting with somebody who was in a big metal band about music, because that's one of those sort of interesting things. Yeah, Queen's great. My favourite Queen song though is probably just Flash, because I really like the Flash Gordon film because of how campy it is. You can work that out from my username, Captain Fries. You can put a hose on the GP5M, but it doesn't have to have a hose. You can either have a green filter directly on the mask, or you can have a hose screwed into it. You can get air particulate things, Lenovo. Let me show you something else I've got. Hang on. That I bought not too recently, or I bought fairly recently I should say. One of these. This is an air quality detector, so what it does is it tells you how many particulates are in the air. So the bottom number is particulates, so that's like 25 to 30, which isn't bad. Then it has a warm-up timer, so what I'll do is I'll put this down and then I'll check it again in a minute, and I can tell you how much formaldehyde and how much volatile organic compounds are in the air. So just put that down there a second and let it run its thing. But yeah, you can get lots of different like air detectors, some that can pick up certain gases, some that pick up particulates, obviously Geiger counters that pick up ionizing radiation, EMF readers, like I say, these are the ones that people, as a few people have said, often get sold as Geiger counters, and they're not Geiger counters, that pick up electrical sort of stuff. Why is that not going at the moment? Because it's next to my screen. Hang on. Let's just turn this off and on. There we go. Working now. But yeah, this is the one that picks up electrical frequencies. Interesting, my microphone sends out slight electrical frequencies. Yeah, go to the dentist, Uncle Sasha. It means that you've probably got gum disease. Which, you know, if you don't take care of that, your teeth are going to fall out. Put on a gas mask and NBC suit, Metal Warrior. What about him, the radioactive Boy Scout? There's still a minute left on my other reader. I'm not going to do it right now, Richard, because I'm taking several readings. Whatever's a decently priced cheap one, Ernie, because if you don't get into it that way, you haven't spent much money on it. But GP5s, MC1s, M65s, any of the ones that normally sell quite cheaply. Electrical frequencies coming out the keyboard as well, but they're pretty low. Oh yeah, I've got some of those for the fish tank, but yeah, in theory you could put them in the air. But yeah, they're the ones you either dip them in water or have them exposed to air, don't you? And then the colours turn up on them depending on, like a litmus test kind of thing. Yeah, where the different colours come on, depending on what they've been exposed to, yeah. Alright, okay, let's have a look at some readings. Right, we'll just reset this to 0. Let's have a look. So, where the top sets as numbers are, that's the formaldehyde and volatile organic compounds. So they can go up and down a little bit depending on air quality indoors, but in general they should be as close to 0 as possible. You can test this device works by blowing into it. See, oh, it's gone up slightly then actually. It's going back down again by the look of it. But yeah, if you want to like see how bad your breath is, let's see what that does to it. But yeah, that's enough of that anyway. I'll reset it and turn it off. This drains batteries pretty quickly. But yeah, these are interesting things. Oh, that's interesting. Well, to be honest, the good thing is the laser, they're only like £10 if I want to replace it, but that's good to know. I've got a couple of small neodymium magnets, but I don't have any really strong ones, but yeah, I'll bear that in mind. So what does it do? Does it just like max the reader out and then does it break? It's another faulty meter. Moscow sends us shit equipment and then wonders why things go wrong. But yeah, I'm assuming, yeah, the magnet just completely fried it, didn't it? Don't know you mean that to Ernie, but yeah, I brush them 2 or 3 times a day. I've not got any fillings or anything. I've still got, other than obviously losing my milk teeth, I've still got an original set of teeth. Yeah, he's got a weird voice, hasn't he, the bloke in the programme who does Bacana, whatever he's called. Do you think I'd keep my wife here if it wasn't safe? That bloke. It's disgraceful, really, spreading disinformation at a time like this. Yeah, Bachanov. Which dosimeter you on about, Beeben? Mine's fine. All of mine work. Cheap masks that have a good chin seal. Well, the GP5 for obvious reasons. I wouldn't say the Draeger M65 has a very good chin seal. But other than Soviet masks, I can't think of many cheap masks that make good chin seals. That are like cheap, other than things like Polish MC1s and Czech CM3s. I've got NBC suits, Metal Warrior, but they're not quite the same thing. But I've never tried a positive pressure hazmat suit. Well, people in the Soviet Union generally did smoke their whole lives. But yeah, there we go. Do another Bachanov one. Hang on. Right.
It's another faulty meter. Moscow sends us shit equipment and then they're surprised when things go wrong. You're wasting our time.
Yeah. Wonder where that actor's actually from. I mean, I know most of the people involved in Chernobyl were, like, they're British actors, aren't they? From, like, either England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. But I wonder where he's actually from. Chernobyl IMDb. Let's have a look. I can't use my mouse very conveniently now, though, because the Geiger counter's sitting where my mouse normally goes.
It's another faulty meter.
Con O'Neill is his name. He was born in Weston-super-Mare, Somerset. He's apparently in Return of the King. The Tunnel 2013. The Tunnel is that? Have I seen that one? Sorry, it's really awkward to use my mouse how it's positioned. Oh, it's like some TV thing about the Channel Tunnel. I thought then it was like a horror film called The Tunnel, like that other one I've seen, but no. I'm just gonna go down his IMDb page and see what else he's in. He's mostly in lots of TV stuff, it seems. Apparently he does a voice of one of the characters in Dark Souls 2 called Titchy Gren. I'm going to have to look this guy up after this video and see, because I've played Dark Souls 2 and I can't think who that is. So where is Titchy Gren in Dark Souls 2? Oh, he's the guy after the Executioner's Chariot, so he's one of those optional ones. Right, I'm going to have to look up a video of him once I finish this stream to actually see if it sounds just like, I'll do another politics stream at some point, but I don't want to do them too often, because a bit like Mike, politics can annoy me quite a bit. But generally when they're done as political streams, they're a lot more productive than when people keep bringing up politics on other streams. I'll probably wait till we know who the next Conservative leader is, probably. You can buy bayonets for the FAL Iron Man, but unfortunately British SLR bayonets are generally like £100+ for a little bayonet. They're like massively gouged in price for what they should cost, so I've never bothered because I think fuck paying that for them, they're not worth that. Well, my PC's not radioactive. See? Again, ionizing radiation. See, this will go off next to a PC, because this is electromagnetic radiation. But the actual Geiger counter won't, because Geiger counters pick up ionizing radiation. Computers don't give out radiation. A Mini Instruments 5.10 apparently. It's a lab spec Geiger, not a military Geiger. Probably bad stuff in high enough concentrations, I imagine, Uncle Sasha. But I don't know how much proof there's ever been other than being like right next to radio masts that it does actually do damage. The cheapest there's a Chinese brand of Geiger counters now that you can buy new on eBay for I think like £60 or £70. And they don't seem bad. I mean, I don't have one, but they seem to do similar functions to what my SOEX one does. But yeah, a basic modern digital Geiger counter is just going to read beta and gamma radiation. They're not going to read alpha, but if you just want one for picking up background radiation levels, they're fine for that. I don't really know enough about this whole 5G stuff. It's hard to know what's real info on it and what's like the crazy, you know, stuff where people have been saying that for years. Like, oh, the mobile phone towers turn people into zombies and all this. Like, there could be some legitimately bad things about 5G. I don't know, but the thing is, I need to read proper scientific studies on it, not like JPEG files made by people on Facebook. You know what I mean? For the people who keep asking political questions, I'm not going to answer this because see the disclaimer. I've already done lots of videos like that with Luigi. Yeah, see, that's the sort of thing that I've heard 64 system, like, if you're working on a radio thing, it has to be shut off for somebody working on, like, an actual radio mast kind of thing from it. But yeah, and, like, it's probably not a good idea to stand next to the mast, so you wouldn't really want one near your house too close. But in terms of, like, going out and about, it's not like you're going to walk into a 5G area and then your brains are going to melt through your nose or something. But again, like, the thing is, there's lots of stuff like this where you get lots of scaremongering. And then you get the people who, even if it's not completely safe, are like, oh no, it's totally safe. There's no danger at all from any kind of electromagnetic radiation to the human body, even though we know that's obviously not true. What, how much does that one cost, Aegis? But normally they'd be like several £100s. Yeah, I've seen Brain Dead. Do you mean Dead Alive? The Peter Jackson one, Brain Dead, Dead Alive. I've also watched Bad Taste as well. Yeah, it soon turn people into... I can't remember what the zombies say. So that, in the Stalker. But yeah, wandering around just going... But then super accurately hip firing you with an AK. You're meant to try and breathe through your nose most of the time, Conrad. It will depend on the model of gas mask. But with most, although it's easier to breathe through your mouth because you can move more volume with your mouth than your nose, you're meant to really breathe through your nose because then you'll start knowing if an odour's coming through, and if an odour's coming through, it means the mask and filter aren't working. Yeah, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if you stayed too long next to an actual mobile phone mast, it would damage you. Because, obviously, electromagnetic radiation, like all those things, is going to have an effect on the body. It's just whether or not they're simply being like a 5G as opposed to a 4G or a 3G signal, you know, in an area would cause damage, I don't know. You know. Well, actual electromagnetic, like an EMP kind of thing, can certainly damage a phone. I got some weird looks from people when we were walking on the dog walk, but as I think I've said before, there's a woman there who goes there looking for fairies while meditating in a field. So she's not got any right to give anybody a weird look, in my opinion. In theory, Luke, but not to a big degree. So how does the Helly Hansen mask actually defog, Conrad, if it doesn't have a Tissot system? Is it just that the air comes through roughly in the right area, and does it have an oral nasal cup? Or is it like the actual stuff the mask lens is made from is kind of got an anti-fogging material on it? Norwegian masks? I don't actually think I do. No, I'm pretty sure I don't actually have any Norwegian masks. I've got a Swedish Fashida mask and a Swedish folk mask. I've got some Finnish masks, and I've got some Danish masks, which are all just surplus masks from other nations. But no, I don't have any Norwegian masks. Well, there's masks where you could look through night vision scopes with the mask on, but nobody's ever made a mask with like night vision electronics installed inside the mask. So as an inner mask, the lens is some kind of PVC, but the inner mask only lets air in on the opposite side of the intake valve. I've never watched it, Uncle Sasha, and I probably won't by the sound of it. It wouldn't surprise me if, like, stuff like a meteor travelling fast through the sky can have effects like that, but I'm not a scientist, so I can't tell you. I've got the Finnish M39, and I've got the weird saber one that nobody can ID online. Yeah, that would probably make sense, Conrad. So it doesn't have a Tissot system as such, but it's still blowing air over the lens. From what I've heard, a lot of the scare over EMP stuff is very exaggerated, as in most electronics now have some sort of EMP shielding, not because they're designed to work in a nuclear war, but just because it makes sense to give it some sort of electromagnetic shielding so your product doesn't brick really easily. So apparently lots of phones, if they are exposed to, you know, like a not stupidly high amount of EMP, they just turn off and turn on again. Yeah, exactly, 64 system. Faraday cages do stop EMPs, and yeah, lots of stuff now has built-in stuff to a degree. Again, it's not going to be like super high stress stuff that's going to last for ages. But to give you some idea of how concerned they really were, like military-wise, about EMP damage, in a lot of the old nuclear war training things, and I know, like, again, you're not going to survive a nuclear war, but just, this is interesting, the stuff they said in there, was that you were meant to take your batteries out of a product, leave the batteries out of it, like, say, a portable radio, then you were just basically told to, you know, you could put tin foil or whatever on it if you really wanted to, because apparently that gave it a bit more protection, but you didn't have to. And it's just, once the nuclear bombs are detonated, because the EMPs have then happened, you just then put the battery in the electronic and turn it on. Because there's not a power source in there, apparently it can't blow. No, the oldest Swedish mask I have is the folk mask. Is that Type 30 or something it's called? But anyway, the stream's gone on for for about an hour now, so I'll be on for a few more minutes and then I'll go off. Thanks to everybody that's donated. I think that was just Laser, wasn't it, today? So thanks again to him. But yeah, I was very pleased to report that this mask did work properly. Yeah, there's also an interesting thing like Calvert and Hatch. They've got that was constructed in a way as well, where it was built like, you know how they did it earthquake insulation on buildings. It's a similar thing. So yeah, they had on Calvert and Hatch. The bunker is actually built on loads and loads of springs in a slightly bigger thing. So what would happen is when the nukes went off, the shockwave would actually cause the building to reverberate on springs, rather than, you know, like the entire concrete taking the force. Oh, thank you very much, Michael. Did you have any questions? But I do really appreciate that. Thank you. I know that Romanian gas masks were mostly like the later model ones, based on the Draeger M65, which is the middle one on that shelf there. A lot of them were licensed copies, and they did some, you know, variations. But I don't actually have any Romanian masks, sadly, because I've never seen any for a decent price. Yeah, it makes sense. I think they've come up with a better thing now, haven't they, than springs, supposedly, for earthquake kind of things. But I know they said with Calvert and Hatch they didn't even know, you know, like when it became demilitarised and the family who owned the land got it back, that there were springs there until they had a water leak or something, and they had to pull up a load of the floor in the bunker to replace it, and then they found loads and loads and loads of springs under everything. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? But yeah, it's quite interesting that when they built a lot of these things, they did take into account, you know, EMP and, like, earthquake stuff. What's really interesting, if you find that sort of stuff interesting, is apparently on the Nevada US test ranges, you know, where they did all the nuclear bomb tests, they use that to actually do structural stability tests on things like bridges and overpasses and bank vaults and things like that. So what they do is they build loads of different bridge models, they'd set a nuke off, and then they'd see which ones survive the best from all like the shock damage from the nuke, for civil engineering use, which is actually like a really interesting kind of byproduct of doing nuclear tests, I guess. You can artificially make earthquakes and hurricanes to test bridges and vaults. Now, I know there's a Greek one, isn't there, rocks, called something like the Cobra. It's got a name like Cobra or something. That's another M65 style mask, but I don't have it. My favourite Soviet mask, Conrad, is the Shums SHMS. You know, like the one that looks like a skeleton face with a voice diaphragm that snipers would use. As far as I'm aware, no, Daniel. Unless it's underground tests, no, because there was, sometime in the 60s, I think it was, the Test Ban Treaty, where all nuclear weapons had to be detonated underground. Like, you couldn't do atmospheric testing, because of like all the shit it threw up into the air and all, like, you know, the basically damage it did to the earth. So as far as I'm aware, all bomb tests now, if you're following international laws, have to be like essentially dug underground, so you don't irradiate, like, you know, the topsoil and everything. That's interesting. No, I didn't know about that one. I've seen lots of different ones they've done with different houses, where they put different types of paint and things on the houses, and then see which ones would catch fire from the thermal flash. And there's some other very interesting things they did like that. They also did ones, didn't they, where they had remote control planes, and they'd have a surface-to-air nuclear bomb. So, you know, it'd be like a surface-to-air missile. They'd fire it up, and then they'd see at what ranges the planes would survive getting ripped apart by the shockwave, because they obviously knew that just simply being out of, like, the fireball range of a nuke didn't mean that your plane would actually survive being ripped to shreds by the blast. The US did test nuclear weapons underwater and in space, but I imagine both of those are banned now under the Test Ban Treaty. But yeah, there was things like Operation Hardtack, Teak and Orange, where the US nuked space, and there's also things like Operation Crossroads, where they did underwater nuclear tests. I've seen the one where they get them to stand under it, and it's at such a height that they say they feel warm, don't they? But they're apparently fine. But they'd still have been fucked with radiation, wouldn't they, doing that? I imagine they'd have got damage from gamma rays and X-rays hitting them. But yeah, I've seen the one where they stand them under it. And there was Operation Plumbob, where they marched loads and loads of US troops and vehicles and everything through a mushroom cloud, and obviously horribly irradiated lots of their own troops to test what effects it had on humans. I think when they say they saw the bones on their hand, what they're actually referring to is the light being so bright that you can see the bone through the hand. A bit like if you hold a torch up to your hand. You know, but much, much brighter. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, Michael. Is that Operation Orange? Because it's part of Hardtack, wasn't it? I can't remember if it was Teak or Orange, but yeah. That's the really impressive one where you see the, especially in Trinity and Beyond, where the nuke goes off in space, and then you see all the people on, you know, Earth, on like the test range bit. It's nighttime, and it literally looks like it's midday for a few seconds with how bright the flash is, you know, in the atmosphere. Yeah, I'll be finishing the stream fairly soon anyway. Yeah, there was a few they didn't test, Daniel, but the interesting one is Operation Hardtack, I think it was called. And that's the one where they actually had like a space capsule go up. Like the nuke detaches from the space capsule and then it detonates. There's quite a lot of dodgy Soviet tests as well. Assume you know about Tsar bomb, don't you, Conrad? The biggest nuclear bomb ever detonated. That was one the Soviets did. There's a place in Kazakhstan known as the Polygon, where they did loads and loads and loads of nuclear tests, where like the people in the surrounding areas all had like horrible cancers and birth defects, and again the modern Russians pretend that they didn't do anything, you know, wasn't our fault, just like the British government does and the Americans did with all the people that were affected by nuclear weapons. You know, oh no, there's no proof that us detonating hundreds of nuclear bombs not very far from you had any effects on your health. Pro-choice, that sounds like it should be an abortion thing, doesn't it, Laser Point Production? But let me look it up. Pro-choice respirator. Oh yeah, I see it. There's one, I was thinking of getting, actually. Let me have a look on Amazon and see what it's called, or it might have been eBay. It was one I was thinking, after payday I might get. Because it's like a really cheap half-face respirator that can take replaceable filters. There's, yeah, the JSP Force is the name of it. And one model is £19, and I think there's some cheaper models. But yeah, that's one that I think I've seen for like £10 on a few places that might be interesting to test. Yeah, they tested Tsar bomb on the islands in the Arctic, didn't they? Like north of Siberia or wherever it was. Yeah, you're thinking of Auchi or Uchi, whatever his name was, who was involved in a criticality accident in the 90s. And then they kept him alive for like 2 months to observe the effects of radiation on the body, which was an absolutely horrible thing to do. Yeah, I've heard 3 times, but yeah, the point is, Luke, isn't it? It was such a big explosion that, yeah, you could measure it going around the Earth several times because of how big the yield was of the thing. And didn't it break windows in places like Finland and Sweden as well? You know, like, so thousands of miles away it was still breaking windows. Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I find it so interesting, Michael, because it's this combination of it's horrifying, and it's, you know, it's really interesting, isn't it? The same thing with a lot of chemical and biological warfare stuff. Oh, thank you very much, Conrad. I appreciate that. Cheers. But yeah. Well, in theory, there is Lion no limit to the size. Yes, that was his first name, was it? Hisashi. But yeah, I've read a few things about him, and I've seen some of the pictures. I've not read like a full-length book, but it's pretty horrifying, isn't it? And like I've said before, if you are dying from acute radiation syndrome, really you should be just given time to say goodbye to your family, and then they should just euthanize you with as much morphine as possible. You shouldn't be kept alive, even though you're going to die anyway, you know. And every day you're going to be in less and less of a proper state. Hydrogen bombs are harder to make 64 system, because hydrogen bombs rely on a fission bomb to explode the bigger bomb. Fission bombs are the easier ones to make. That's why, like, Little Boy, the first ever... It wasn't the first ever nuke, because Trinity was, but the first bomb... The reason they didn't test the Little Boy style design, the uranium gun, before dropping it was because they were certain it would work on paper. Because all Little Boy was enriched uranium, and it was like one big block of uranium and a smaller bit, and it essentially shot it like a gun into the bigger block, and that was just the entire detonation system. Yeah, because they had 100 megaton, couldn't they, potentially, Michael, they could have done. Because the casing, I think, could fit 100 megatons of, essentially, material into it, but they used a 50 MT one so the plane could get away, potentially, and it wouldn't do too much damage to their own test things. And apparently the damage from SAR bomb was also minimised because it was airburst. Obviously you didn't get fallout, or minimal fallout, and I think the explosion rebounded off of itself somehow. I don't understand the science behind that, but apparently the explosion would have been a lot worse for the surrounding areas if it hadn't, like, hit something and then come back, which took a lot of the shock out of the explosion. Yeah, the casing could go up to 100 MT, but they could scale it, basically. But SAR bomb was mostly a test thing to prove, because basically the problem was the Soviets couldn't build as accurate missiles at the time as the US, so with all the saber rattling, you know, dick waving that the superpowers did, America basically said, we don't need really big nukes because we can put our nuclear missiles and pinpoint hit them you on the map with them. So then the Soviets were like, but we can put a very, very big bomb on something and then just wipe you all out, even if we can't directly hit you. So that's why they did SAR bomb. It was a dick-waving move to basically say, you know, it doesn't matter if our missiles aren't very accurate, because we can just put such a big warhead on there that will glass everything. Yeah, they also had some crazy theories, didn't they, with some of the Crossroads ones, that they thought all the water might go out of the sea or something, like it would almost unplug the ocean. Yeah, they were planning on nuking Germany. That's what the Manhattan Project was originally developing nuclear bombs for, was dropping on Germany, not Japan. But as Germany surrendered before Japan, the bombs were never used against Germany. Yeah, because that's a crazy thing, isn't it? That apparently, like, the plane almost got knocked out the sky, didn't it? Even though they were quite far away by the time the bomb detonated with SAR. The shockwave still, like, massively stalled the plane and, like, knocked bits off of it, and they had to, you know, like, essentially crash land it, didn't they? Or restart the engines in the air. Yeah, 2.5 times I've heard, Michael, but yeah, they were planning on it being about 5 or 6 megatons, weren't they? And it was actually 15 megatons, because one of the things in the casing was a lot more reactive than they thought. Anyway, I'll go off now, because as I said, I was meant to go off about 10 minutes ago, and now I've been talking about nukes. Maybe on another stream we should just talk about nukes for ages, because nukes are absolutely fascinating NBC warfare. Anyway, yeah, it's cool. See everybody, it's been a great stream. Thanks everybody, and yeah, talking about nukes near the end was really fascinating. So thank you for all the donations, everybody. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll stream tomorrow, but when I stream tomorrow, it'll probably be 1 or 2 PM sort of time. And then I'll be on mic stream in the evening. So yeah, see ya. Thanks everybody.